I'm honored to be leading this session, and I'm honored to welcome our distinguished guests, starting with Mrs. Leontine Specker, the Regional Director for Middle East and Turkey at Spark, Mr. Fadi Abdellatif, Economic Growth and Infrastructure Team Leader at USAID for the West Bank and Gaza Mission, Mr. Khaled Rajab, Strategic Advisor for Jordan and Palestine at Enabel, and last but not least, Dr. Ashok Sarkar, Program Leader for Infrastructure and Senior Energy Specialist at the World Bank Mission. Warm welcome to our guests. This session, we will look again at the strategy that Mr. Tamer Baransi presented this morning, and we will get feedback from our distinguished guests. Donors play a very critical role in actually leading a lot of the sectors here, because besides the government, they are the only source of funding many times besides some investment, and that's why their role is very critical. I would like to set this scene before we start. وأنا بعتذر إنه رح نعمل الجلسة بالإنجليزي بسبب ضيوفنا. If I can have the presentation, please. So let me start by saying 15 years ago, when I used to work for the UK government, we took a group of companies to the UK and we met at Google premises. And after the warm welcome, they told us, tell us about Palestine and the IT sector. What is your offer? And the response was, tell us what you want. We can do anything for you. This was 15 years ago. Since then, many things have happened. But unfortunately, the answer is still almost the same. We're still open to offer anything, from artificial intelligence to big data, anything you want. And some companies which specialized actually were able to move up, and some removed at the low level and have to compete with the very much cheaper countries around the world. The strategy that Tasdeer helped develop, and this is just the initial inception outcome of the strategy, and want to extend a warm thanks to Momentum Labs, our consultants who are working with us on this, let me see if the clinker works. Just want to remind ourselves of the two questions that Mr. Tamer presented this morning. What is our value proposition in Palestine? What is our offering as an ICT sector? And where do we want to be in 3 years? The world is becoming very competitive, and we need to see what is our niche and what is really our offer. And in this, I think initial discussions with the sector and with the government and with the donors, everyone wants to see the ICT sector contributing more than the 3% of the GDP. And as Mr. Tamer presented, we looked at other countries, and other countries have done much more in shorter periods of time. How much GDP contribution? This is still, the KPIs are not there. We will talk about them hopefully in the next month and two. But there are three outputs that I think also there is consensus around. We need to identify the global technology trends, and you've seen the big pizza that we showed this morning. I don't want to go back. The world is huge. Where do we focus? We need to define what human capitals we need to respond to this focus. We need to direct investments towards that focus, and we need to also direct the infrastructure and the regulatory environment to respond to this focus. In the next 2 months, there will be a lot of validation by the consultants with everyone so that we can all then speak one language and one vision. From the prime minister level to any company, when asked, what do we want to be as Palestine the next 3 years? We hope that we will have one response. We want to be there. What is there? Let's talk about it. I would like to turn to my distinguished panel and pose the following. First of all, your organizations that you represent contribute quite a bit to Palestine and to the ICT sector specifically. I would like, just by way of introduction, that you tell us a little bit, just in 2 minutes, what is your organization's main programs? And then, what is your immediate reaction to this? Is this good news? Does this make sense? Shall we continue? And then after we do this round, we'll come to what does it mean for your future planning. But let's do the first round. I'd like to start with you, Mrs. Specker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you also for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here today. First of all, in terms of Spark's contribution, I would like to go back a bit in terms of our approach and the 3 main ways in which we hope to stand out as an organization. And that's first of all what we call localization, but which in reality means partnerships and facilitating the different stakeholders to come together and to find joint solutions. So for us, that is with some of our main partners here in Palestine, of course, such as PITA, the Intersect Innovation Hub, but also partners such as the Business Women Forum and many others. In addition to that, we also work very closely with several line ministries, which also brings us a lot of different expertise, of course, and we hope to bring that in to the work that we do. So altogether, for us it is about working together and facilitating and brokering, let's say, those connections which are key to success for us in the end of the day. Secondly, it's about bringing expertise. So this is really something that we've seen also in many other countries where we worked in the Middle East, that it's not about the first next program, let's say, and managing that together. It is about bringing the expertise and to provide very specialized support to business support organizations as well as to the entrepreneurs. So that's been key for us, and we really hope to continue to deliver that also here in Palestine. Lastly, also the focus on women and women's entrepreneurship, which I think is especially relevant here in Palestine, knowing that about 20%, if I'm not mistaken, of the startups are owned by women. So that requires also access to finance and very specialized, let's say, expertise to connect them to the opportunities that are out there. So all of this is in line with the 2030 strategy that we've recently launched, which has a very strong thematic focus on digitalization, green tech and agri-tech. So in short, to respond to your question, I mean, we are very pleased to see this policy being launched, and it is very much in line with what we also have committed to, let's say, with our 2030 strategy. So for us, it's definitely the way forward, by all means. In terms of our specific programs that we're currently operating, we have a regional program funded by the European Union, which is also implemented here in Palestine, and it's all about innovation and entrepreneurship, and a large part of that is in relation to digital startups, green tech, and agribusinesses, as I mentioned, but also the support to the ecosystem, if you'd like. So really bringing the partners together as a network and then jointly delivering that. It also has a strong lobby and advocacy component, which already led to conversations around the Startup Act, for instance. So it's really also about leveraging all of the experience at scale and connecting that to the different countries where we work, such as Tunis and Lebanon and Jordan. Lastly, we also have 2 programs funded by Google. One is ongoing, one is about to start, and that focuses a lot on power skills, soft skills training, coding schools, but also entrepreneurship development in cooperation with our universities, internship placements, importantly, and also job placements to follow from that. So there's, of course, a lot to say, but let me stop here, and I think I'm happy to respond later on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Leontine. We hope that we can finish before schedule so that we can also open it for questions. Dr. Fadi, it's hard to keep up with USAID. So many projects, millions and millions. What's happening?
Well, thank you, Nassim. And I really would like to thank the organizers of this conference. It's coming timely, where everyone is talking digitalization, especially after the COVID crisis. Now, this needs lots of donor support, and I'll be frank here, I don't think that the donors are coming within just one vision. I think that the donors' activities in Palestine are fragmented and needs kind of a framework to work under. In USAID, we have two main concepts that are recently introduced. One is localization, same as PARC. And that means putting the local institutions in the driver's seat. This means, in this case, putting the ICT sector in the driver's seat and let them drive the agenda and not driven by the agenda. That is really important. The second concept is progress but not projects. So we have to look for results, and not just do project after project without achieving so much results. Talking about projects, we have a couple of projects which are really tools. One is the Building Regional Economic Bridges, BREB for short. It helps the Palestinian private sector acquire the needed technology, know-how, research and development, and basically will have a component for like internship, partnership, access. We have the SMART project that many of you are familiar with. It works with the small and medium enterprises, but also with startups, and basically there is a component which is very important under SMART, which is the policy reform component, working with local institutions. In this case, for example, PITA, in order to address some policy issues. Tomorrow, we are launching in Ramallah a new project on digital financial services, and this is bringing international companies like MasterCard in partnership with local financial institutions in order to do partnerships and develop products. And with it, it will be coupled with an awareness campaign on digital financial services. That's important. Yesterday, the Prime Minister mentioned the vocational training and his interest in TVET institution. We have a program in this regard, and we will be working with the private sector, the TVET private sector, in order to advance vocational training here. So that is for USAID programs. However, we have a sister agency called DFC, which basically provide financial tools to the market. And by financial tools, I mean political risk insurance, debt, equity, credit guarantee. That is really important, and this is newly introduced in the Palestinian market, so I would call upon everyone to take advantage of this, of these tools. Just speaking about the strategy, I think that this is the right timing to get a strategy, and I hope that this strategy, this is the 3-year strategy, right? So I hope that it will sustain for 3 years and will continue, even if the PITA board is changed or anything has changed in this context. So there are a couple of points that you've recommended. One is the regulatory environment, which is right on. I think that we have to have the proper conducive enabling environment for businesses to thrive here. This is essential. The Palestinian government has started to do some work in that. I would commend the PA for passing the companies law, but still we have a long way to go. The IPR law is very important for the tech industry. The competition law, the e-signature, everyone raised this issue in the past sessions. Now, of course, on the hardware, I would say the infrastructure, there is no way to advance with 40% of the population having just 2G telecom. We have, I mean Gaza, we have to have 4G and 5G telecom in West Bank and Gaza. but also other infrastructure needs. There are some developments in this regard. In terms of education, I think that there is lots of mismatch between the education system and the market needs. And basically, the education is outdated, especially university education. They need to be fully technological. That applies not only to universities, but also to vocational training and other tools. In terms of the incubators and accelerators, there are lots of incubators and accelerators in the West Bank and Gaza, but I don't think that they have yielded the anticipated results. This is not to undermine the success stories that we have. They are good, but we have to build on them. And I think that it is important to, for the entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that our young generation here, they have the talent. They need some tools in order to advance theirs and enhance their skills. That is important in terms of the education and bridging the gap between education and the market needs. I would finish with the multinationals, I think that, and the investment. Of course, this is related to the enabling environment, but you know, that would really needs lots of work on the enabling environment, but also on diplomacy. And I think that the donor community will have a responsibility here. De-risking investment and trying to de-risk investment and bringing in multinationals with their diplomacy and lots of efforts. I'll stop for here and we'll be happy to ask any question that people might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Fadi. Dr. Khaled, briefly.
Thank you, Nassim. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be with you today at this great event, and thank you, PITA, for the great organization and the invitation. I will try to be as brief as possible because I see Omar sent the note. So just to brief you about what we do, I am wearing two hats actually, and these hats are linked together today. As a strategic advisor for Enabel, we have been working in Palestine since 1997 with projects of more than 140 million euros, let's say. And these projects extend from education, TIVET, entrepreneurship, private sector development, local government services, green services. And now the new trend we are now focusing on is the climate change, green and circular economy, digitalization. That's the hat that's one hat. The other hat, which is very important also, is the hat of, as Belgium, we are leading also the EU Team Europe initiative on digitalization. And just to give you a brief idea about that, the EU member states under the EU delegation organize themselves under certain thematic areas to make sure that at least within the EU member states, we are coordinating. We are still, there's good progress on that, but we are still, I think there's a need for improvement within the member states and also with other donors. So under this Team Europe initiative, digital, this summer the EU produced and published Team Europe initiative digital response strategy, which I think comes on time and in line with PITA strategy and the strategy that you are working on. And based on this strategy, we are now currently working with Expertise France, the AFD implementing arm, let's say, to design a new and formulate a new initiative on digitalization. And this is still under the design. Just to give you a very brief, where are the digital elements in our programming, it's across the board. And we look at digital is not just IT. IT is important, it's the core. But for us, digital is more of infrastructure, hardware, software, components. It's also skilling, it's also legal environment. So under the new portfolio that is funded by the Belgian government, which started this year for another 5 years, for more than 70 million euros, we will be working on education and under education, we will be focusing on promoting the connectivity and the infrastructure development of schools in Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and providing the schools with the technology, with the labs needed for advancing technology and digital education and transformation for students and for also teachers. We are working also on improving the quality of teaching by providing training to teachers. That's part of the education. The second element of this program or portfolio is working with civic engagement and youth empowerment. And under this, I can mention that we will be working on advancing and promoting digital rights for youth or young people to allow them to express their views, their voices using digital tools and digital means, and also to work with other relevant organizations, ministries, the government, to see how can we make sure that youth are protected in terms of digital rights. The third component of the portfolio is working on employment and entrepreneurship and pivot. And under that, we are working with the Ministry of Entrepreneurship, as mentioned by His Excellency before, and Ministry also of Labor on including pivot, what we call it pivot, or technology and digital instruments and skills under the pivot education. The last two elements of the programs are working on Green Palestine, which is climate change and green services. And for that also we are looking for improving the digital capacity of local authorities, local governments, and providing them with the tools that are necessary to promote green services and circular economy and become the catalysts in their communities for local economic development. These are maybe the main elements of the Belgian portfolio. For the second initiative, which is we are still designing for the EU under digital economy / digital transformation, we are also looking at improving the digital capacity of the local market in terms of skilling, upskilling, and also in terms of infrastructure, in terms of legal environment. The other element is, which is very important, I think, is connecting the Palestinian ICT companies, Palestinian entrepreneurs with EU companies, and providing opportunities for exchange and partnerships. That's the second element. I will finish by maybe just to mention, last week we had a session for the EU member states under the Team Europe Initiative digital platform to discuss the theory of change of what we are trying to do. And it wasn't an easy discussion. It was interesting, challenging, because again, I mean, the issue related to what we mean about digital transformation and digital economy is still, I think, an issue, a question that needs to be further tackled by different stakeholders. And I look forward for this strategy that you are preparing with PITA, and also PITA to take the leading seat on guiding us as donors, as international organizations, on what and how can we align our programs and projects, initiatives with the ICT strategy and the local strategies too. And by this I will finish, and we can continue maybe with the questions later.
Dr. Ashok.
Thank you very much, Nassim, and thanks to PITA for inviting me to this panel.
We should be invited to the party outside, right?
I think, first of all, let me please mention that I am not a digital and IT specialist like you guys are. So I'm learning a lot. Quite frankly, when I came in here, more as a person who wants to understand how digital tools and technologies can be applied to the real development sectors. You know, when I did my engineering 38 years ago, we used to call electricity is the engine of growth. Today, digital technologies are the engine of growth. And that's happening world over. And therefore, I think it's very important when you look at the strategy, and I think, Nassim, it's a good outcome which you have mentioned, that digital tool has to be mainstreamed into each and every sector of the economic development chain. And I was actually hoping to see more electricity sector people here, more transport people here, and health and education sector people here. Because I think the ministers did talk about that digital is linked to not just for the sake of training people and developing IT skills and mainstreaming IT infrastructure, but to make electricity sector work well, make water supply work well, make education systems work well, and make health systems work well. And those are the real benefits of digital economy. And I think, look, I'm starting with the strategy outcome, and then I'll go into what the bank has been doing in these areas. And I think your pillars are perfect. Of course, you have to prioritize the pillars. Being from India, India is like, Indians are all over the world doing digital stuff. And I know how it happened. Growing up, we saw the government played a major role. They set the enabling environment for the private sector to come in and do things, do innovation, bring in new technologies. And so far as, if you go today, when I was a kid, to get a landline telephone connection took 5 years of waiting period. Today, if I go there at the airport, they're giving me a cell phone, 5G, the cheapest in the world, both the equipment and the service, with which I can do anything I want to do. On my cell phone sitting here, I can monitor the electricity power consumption of my home 6,000 miles away in Washington, DC. That is the application of digital technology which we have seen. And I think we need to really link this strategy not just to look inward, but outward. How do you bring in all these potential beneficiaries of this sector right up front? I would suggest not to develop tools and technologies and then give it to them. Start talking to them from day one. Like I work with Penra, the electricity company here in ministry. They need a lot of digital solutions to make their solar panels smarter, to make their transmission and distribution network smarter, to make the billing and collection of bills of electricity smarter. Now, all that has to be bottom-up approach to some extent. And I know your strategy is almost like a top-down pillar approach, but I would suggest that along with that, it's also good to see what is the demand. What would the electricity sector need? What if electric vehicles come into Ramallah in large numbers tomorrow? Those electric vehicles would have batteries. Those batteries can talk to homes. They can talk to grids. Those transport sector will demand all those technologies. Are we looking beyond that and seeing what kind of technologies they need, what kind of tools they need? And I think that would be a good way of making this strategy a lot more impactful and result-oriented at the end. And pillars, of course, those are the right pillars. I mean, you need the capacity building, the human capacity to deliver. You need infrastructure, which I understand. Being a non-specialist, what I've heard, there is a problem with the bandwidth and the connectivity to the beyond the 2G in Gaza and beyond the 3G in Palestine, in West Bank. And within that, what can be done and how do you change that infrastructure environment? What kind of regulations are required? Because we see a lot of private sector players here. From whatever I could understand from the Arabic to English translation, which was, by the way, not excellent, but it was okay. I could make out that there is a lot of pockets of success stories around the room, around Palestine. And therefore, the strategy makes sense that you are trying to bring everybody together. So I think there is this notion that, as I said, I look at digital as a tool to develop electricity sector, to develop transport sector, to develop health. I'm going to just spend 2 more minutes to tell you the 5 things we are doing right now. And this is really borrowed from my colleagues who actually lead the sector. I also have my IFC colleague, Rafif, who is sitting in the front table. In case you want to talk to her, we're part of the World Bank group. So the 5 things which we are doing, the 2 big things are the Digital West Bank and Gaza project. It's a $20 million project which helps in the establishment of the regulatory side, the regulator, which is, we don't want to get into the details of that, but also the development of the regulatory frameworks for cybersecurity, which we heard earlier, for data protection, and government to business services, and kind of bringing all the institutions together, the whole government approach. Then we have another focused intervention on the education, which was your third pillar. We have a $20 million program which helps bring 200,000 students and 6,000 teachers into the STEM education, and through STEM, trying to bring in elements of digital development, digital tool, IT training. You know, I'm not IT trained. You can see I'm using papers. This gentleman is using a smart tablet, right? I mean, you know, that's what the reality is. And because I was not trained to do these things, I mean, I hardly use my cell phone 10% of what it can actually do. So I think we really need to look at the practicalities of, and so our Seratech project, which is supporting an education reform agenda for improved teaching assessment and career pathways, is actually exactly doing that, trying to bring the schools in mainstream. The final two projects are on the payments and digital finance technical assistance, the pay and the cashless transactions. Again, every time I go back to my home country, India, I find even the street vendors is asking for payment with the phone, and I have no clue how to pay. I take out my wallet, take out my money and give it to him. He said, I don't take money. I just take phone-to-phone transactions. Now, that's happening even in Palestine. I've seen a lot, and we have a project which is doing that. Final project is what we call the Finance for Jobs and Technology for Youth and Jobs project. It's a $15 million project with additional $3 million we are going to put soon, which is focused on not only providing training and skills, but how to get those people fit into the development sectors. So the appropriate skilling, because what I've heard from my colleagues is that when you ask around in the industry, they say they can't find trained people, IT trained people, which means that there are lots of, we heard in the morning, there are lots of IT people being trained. There's a mismatch sometimes. What you are being trained for may not be the right skills what is required by the industries, particularly when you talk about downstream industries, the health and the education and SMEs and the electricity industry. So I think that project focuses on that. Again, I am not an expert on this. I don't really lead these projects. We can put you in touch with the right people in the World Bank. Of course, our Jerusalem office here will be able to help. I have my email address and name on the agenda. Please feel free to reach out. I'll put you in touch with the right people.
Thank you, Dr.
Thanks
Rashid.
a lot again.
Thanks very much. We're left with a couple minutes. Sorry about the promise to open it for questions, but I think we can do that during the break. Just want to say two things. One, addressing the PITA board and say you have a big challenge with this strategy. The challenge is that you remain in the driver's seat. To be honest, the past 2-3 months, we've done a lot of research at Tasdeer project about what is being done by donors in the IT sector, and it's been really a very difficult journey because, to say the least, very few are talking to each other. Very few donors are talking to each other. Aid coordination, unfortunately, is at its lowest since 20 years since I've been in this business. We have a big challenge. I think the challenge for PITA is that this strategy is not shelved like the 2014 strategy. One is that it is renewed and evaluated every year because this is digital, right? It's IT, it changes. Second is that the next board takes it on and continues with it. And there are challenges for the donors, and I want really maybe just a simple 30-second answer from you. The biggest challenge in the strategy to the donors is don't just bring your money, bring your private sector, bring your MNCs, and bring your investments. Ideally, Expo Tech should be 50% attendees from foreigners, not Palestinians. I think our dream is that next year probably we can work together as donors, and I started speaking to Fadi, is that donors should work so that next year half of these seats are filled with IT companies from the donor countries. coming here to tour around and to see what the IT sector, we're talking to each other. Really little value, honestly, year after year. I think we go visit sometimes, but we need to bring them here. And the challenge to the donors is, can you use your leverage to actually influence MNCs to come and just see, have a look? We've looked at Lithuania this morning. It was all over the place. MNCs with universities, working with them. We're looking at Estonia, Rwanda, Costa Rica. They're all the same. And I think money alone, it's not going to work. We have to, now PITA has made a commitment to be in the driver's seat, and they're saying, this is where we want to go. Come behind us, support us. But MNCs and investment, de-risking investment is kind of, is there. It's obvious and it's important. Does that make sense to you? Is this possible, doable? Just quickly, maybe around the table, and then we will finish. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid I have a bit of a different answer because we're not a donor. We are an international NGO. Exactly. So yes, we can, and I think one of the advantages, let's say, for Spark and the way we work is that we have a large network of angel investors and larger companies and equity investors, let's say venture capitalists that are interested to work in emerging markets. So that's definitely one element that we can bring, and those investors are coming from the Gulf, they come from the EU, as well as from the Netherlands, but it's not as such from a donor country, but more from our networks. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that in order to build up that outsource capacity that we talked about also earlier in the day, it requires, of course, the relevant skills. And I think you mentioned it before in terms of making sure that people are trained to hire, right? And that is not always done by the universities, but increasingly by connecting that to the private sector. So it is a much smaller component and not directly in relation to your question, but I wanted to mention it in, as a feedback to the strategy. So that's really something that we would advocate for and help for, to make that connection between the training, the skills development, and then the internships and the jobs that we're able to provide. So if that's the case, that will automatically then, you know, attract also investors to come because they find the relevant skills, let's say, that they're looking for. So let me just leave it at that. I know there's a time limitation, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Nassim, I think that, well, we'll take this challenge and let's target for next years to have investors, at least potential investors. We're not like, we have to be realistic. Let's bring in multinationals here, let them explore. I totally agree with you. And let's have the next year's Expo Tech like with maybe half, less than half, that's fine, but more internationally, with more international audience. In terms of the strategy, I think if adopted, that would be really a framework for all donors, and we have to set this vision for all donors, and I would say focus on donor coordination, not only at the donors level, but also at the activity level and the intervention level in order to assist in the implementation of this vision and framework. This is the first time that we'll have a comprehensive vision, so I'll be happy to see it implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Really briefly.
Thank you. Just to pick up on the donors coordination and maybe something practical that we can recommend as a panel here, since we are maybe representing most of the donors, let's say some, the World Bank, EU member states, USAID, and maybe international NGOs. I know that coordination is happening. I mean, we cannot say it's not happening, but it's maybe not at the level that we are hoping for. There's also the coordination at the sector working group level and other, let's say, platforms. But what can we maybe recommend and start a practical step is to form a sort of an informal donor group coordination to coordinate among us on digital. I know that USAID published and prepared a digital strategies or study The World Bank is also doing this, and we are using your study and assessment for our projects and programs. The Team Europe initiative also developed a digital response strategy. You are also helping PITA on this strategy. So in terms of strategies, we have good foundation. Now maybe the next step is how to translate these strategies to coordinated programs and initiatives, and this needs a coordination mechanism among us and with the government. Second, and I will finish by that, I know that there are many I am not a digital expert too. Don't be fooled by this. This is just a tool. I like that, but again, I'm not a digital expert. I'm trying to learn from my digital colleagues and digital experts. But I know that there are many good examples and success stories of partnerships between Palestinian companies and international companies. This is good because it gives the hope that it can be done and can be scaled up. What we look for is to have PITA again coordinate these efforts with all donors and open the market for international companies, international organizations from Europe, from the US, from Asia, to come and be part of the Expo-Tech, as Fadi mentioned, next year, and establish relationships. The Prime Minister yesterday mentioned that the EU investment platform, he mentioned that briefly, that is putting a lot of money to support investment and channel and promote investment opportunities. This is an opportunity that we, as ICT sector and PITA, should take advantage of. We are, as Belgium government, trying to bring what we call BIO. The BIO is the Belgium investment company, to be part of this, and this is something maybe we should aim for the next year.
Thank you.
Ashok.
Yeah,
30 seconds.
Yeah, I think, of course, yes to donor coordination. And I'm also, a question to you all is there a sector working group in this field like we have for energy, water, and other sectors in West Bank and Gaza, which allows the donors like ourselves to meet every 3 months? Like in energy, which we attend along with the EU and other partners. We have some 10, 12 different very active donors, along with the counterpart, which is PENRA. So maybe there is a way to set up a sector group in this area. And again, MNCs, what we have seen, could also be brought through other channels, like you can have collaboration with universities. Many universities around the world have benefited by having MNC chairs embedded within the university, which they sponsor, so that then there is a direct relationship with those universities, and those universities produce graduates who then are picked up by the MNCs or the group of MNCs. So I think that's very commonly done. I was in Morocco where I saw this happening. Even in the region, it's being done also, not just in the OECD world.
It is possible. There are many ways to do it. Thank you. Tamer, you missed the big part. You missed the most important part. Well, this does not represent all donors, but I think if 4 major donors and a facilitator, 3, and say MNCs is possible. A strategy is a framework. You are in the driver's seat. Aid coordination is not at its best, but you can make it happen. You can lead. And next year, we'd like to see a large number of MNCs and internationals here. And donors, at least some are committed to making it happen. So I think this is a good outcome. Thank you all for sticking with us. Thank you, distinguished panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to call upon Mrs. Jekaterina Juvina to join us right away for her presentation. Ms. Juvina is the partner at Response Legal and co-founder at Amelize. Please. Yes, it should be up in a second. Yeah, you should get معهم.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us. For me, it's personally an honor to be here in Palestine. It's a first time, and I should be frank with you. I was really surprised how advanced Palestine is in financial technology industry. I just had conversation with the PMA representative, and I was really, really surprised. And I thought that maybe not me should be coming here and telling Lithuanians a story on fintech, but Palestine representatives coming to Lithuania and telling their story. So thank you very much, and thank you for organizers to having me here. In Lithuania, we sometimes are joking that we are famous for two things. First is basketball, so we are really, really good at that. And second one is fintech. So my goal is here to tell you a story how we built actually a fintech ecosystem in Lithuania. And it is a 6-year-old story already. But first of all, I always ask, if some country wants to build a fintech sector, I ask why you want to do that. Why you want to develop fintech sector? What are your goals? What you want to achieve? And actually our goal in Lithuania was, here you see the graph, and there is like our banking sector, how it looked 6 years ago. So we had 3 major banks in Lithuania that were like oligopoly. Yes, so we were able to set prices which were high for consumers. They were able not to develop innovations, which we were not, as consumers, really happy about. So we wanted to change it. And we saw fintech industry, like fintech startups, as somebody who can come to our industry and challenge our banks and encourage them to change. So back in 2016, and here is our Minister of Finance back then, Vilius Šapoka. So he led the initiative from government side to set strategy for government to develop fintech sector in Lithuania and become like a fintech hub in the region. Yes, so in 2016, our government in its program set a clear goal that we want to become fintech hub in Europe. And simultaneously, I was working in central bank back then. So central bank as well set strategy for developing fintech market in the country. So we, as a central bank, decided to become very open, innovative one in order to develop financial technology industry. What happened next? So here are logos of our public sector institutions. So there were like 14 institutions coming together, setting a work group on fintech and deciding what to do. And here is the list of actual things, what we needed to do in order to develop fintech sector. So first of all, and I couldn't stress it enough, it is a remote client onboarding, eKYC. So without that, and we got clear message from fintech industry all around the world, so without eKYC, you cannot talk about fintech. Nobody wants to come to the country where they cannot onboard clients remotely. Nobody in fintech industry wants to open branches, meet the client physically. So everybody wants to onboard clients digitally. So that's all about fintech, yes, providing services remotely. And here is the list of other measures we needed to implement, like to encourage our industry to establish fintech association, to be lobbying in government, then to prepare our jurisdiction promotion plan, and I will tell a bit more about that, and to establish different programs in order to develop industry. Here is the picture of Deputy Governor of Central Bank and unicorn company, Revolut. back in 2016. So Revolut company wasn't a unicorn company back then. Now the valuation is 30 billion USD dollars. So it's really, really impressive company. And back then, they were just startup. So we invited them in the first Lithuanian FinTech conference and signed MOU with them, just saying that we want you to be in the country, and we want you to develop your business from Lithuania. So now they are in Lithuania, they have banking license, and they operate throughout the world. Here are some measures that our central bank took in order to be very welcome and very open for FinTech. So we established a newcomer program, meaning that any new investor entering our market, he could just write an email and get the meeting with the central bank in 2 days. So that was like KPIs to grant admission to the central bank in 2 days. So every new investor could meet representatives of central bank and speak with them about expectations, about plans, and so on. Regulatory sandbox, I know you already have the one here. So we as well developed a regulatory sandbox in order to allow companies to test financial innovations in this sandbox. And what is important, and especially for banking industry, for regulated industry, it is important compliance. Yes, because nobody wants to breach anti-money laundering rules, sanctions evasions, cyber securities, and so on. So we, as well, in central bank, we put focus on developing IT tools in order to supervise companies effectively. And here is, I told about Lithuania promotion plan. So here is our list of what we are, what is our value proposition as a country. So again, I told about this open regulator, really open and willing to help companies. Smooth authorization process. So again, if London or Berlin or any other capitals were licensing companies and it took like 2 years, in Lithuania we said, okay, we can issue license in 6 months. Yeah, in 3 months, in 6 months. So we were really, really willing to be very open and working hard in order to, not companies for not waiting too long to establish their business. We opened our payment infrastructure for FinTech companies. It's really, really important. So as a central bank, we run payment system. So we opened it not only to banks, but to FinTech companies. So they could access euro payments through central bank. So this was really, really important. And some other things. I already mentioned it. So just going to conclusion. So this is situation back in 2017. So 5 years ago. So we calculated that we had 120 companies back then. Yeah, so it's already, where after 1 year of working, so new companies came to the industry. And here is the picture last year. After 4 years of working on FinTech development, so more than 230 companies were established in Lithuania. You see that payments industry is the largest one. So our focus actually was on payments industry. As well, a lot of companies are focusing right now on investments, on cryptocurrencies, and on regulatory compliance tools like anti-money laundering, KYC, and so on. So industry is quite diversified, and we managed to attract top venture capital firms to invest in these companies. So just one example, 3 months ago, one of these FinTech companies announced that they just raised 50 million of euros from international venture capital firm. So we already started to attract capital in the country, which is really, really good. And these companies operate like worldwide. It's not like locally focused companies, and it is important for companies to sell their services abroad and to expand possibilities abroad. So that's it, in a nutshell, like a short story of our success, and I really, really wish that Palestine managed to develop its fintech sector as well. So thank you very much for your attention.